I want to start with a concept. It's from criminal law, and it's called strict liability.
Okay.
Usually for a crime to be, a crime, you have to intend to do something bad.
Mm-hmm.
But with strict liability, your intent just doesn't matter at all.
Right. It's a binary switch. Action equals consequence.
Exactly. Speeding is the classic example. It doesn't matter if you didn't mean to go over the limit, you were speeding, you did the thing, you pay the price.
And that makes sense for a traffic ticket.
Right. But what if I told you that for like a huge chunk of American history, that exact same logic applied to your citizenship?
To your actual citizenship.
Yeah. You could wake up one morning having done something totally mundane, like, say, voting in a local election somewhere else, and find out your U.S. citizenship had just been automatically deleted.
Wow. No trial, no, I didn't mean to defense. Just look.
Gone.
It sounds like a bureaucratic glitch, but you're saying it was actually the law. Oh, yeah. It was the law. Specifically, the Nationality Act of 1940. It operated on this core assumption that citizenship was a privilege the government granted you.
And therefore, a privilege the government could revoke if you didn't, I guess, follow the rules.
Exactly. It feels so fragile compared to how we think about it today, right?
Totally. We assume once a citizen, always a citizen. But today we're diving into a stack of materials, specifically a transcript from a mobility space discussion from late 2025 that suggests our citizenship is both stronger and, weirdly, more complex than we think.
Yeah, we're analyzing the legacy of a Supreme Court case. It's called Afroyim v. Rusk from 1967.
And this is the case that supposedly made U.S. citizenship robust.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
But the experts in our source material, an immigration attorney, Parviz Malakouti, and a citizenship strategist, John Richardson, they argue that robustness isn't just about the law.
It's about strategy.
It's all about strategy. And they connect this case from the 60s to modern family planning.
Which is what I found so fascinating.
Yeah.
Literally, where you should choose to have a baby to give them the best possible shot at freedom in a pretty volatile world.
It's a direct line from the Supreme Court to the maternity ward. But to really get the strategy, we have to understand the history. And that starts with one man, Parviz Malakouti.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Parviz Malakouti, he's a Polish immigrant, comes to the U.S. in 1912, becomes a naturalized citizen in 1926. He's an American.
Through and through. But in 1950, he moves to the newly formed state of Israel.
And this is where that strict liability trap gets sprung.
It is. In 1951, there's an election in Israel. Afroyim lives there, so, he goes to the polls and votes.
That's it. He just casts a ballot. He doesn't join an army or swear allegiance to a king.
Nope, just votes, which to you and me sounds like basic civic participation.
Yeah. But fast forward 10 years, it's 1960, and he wants to come back to the U.S. He applies to renew his passport, and the State Department rejects him.
And they cite Section 401E of that Nationality Act. Voting in a foreign election triggers expatriation.
And they didn't care that he wanted to stay American.
Didn't matter. Didn't care if he even knew about the law. The act of voting was the trigger. He was, effectively stripped of his identity because he filled out a ballot. So
he sues Afroyim v. Rusk, and it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, usually Supreme Court arguments are really, dry and serious.
Oh, for sure.
But the source material highlights this tactical blunder by the government's lawyer, that is. It's almost comical.
It really is. The lawyer's name was Mr. Gordon, a top guy for the INS. He was up there arguing that the government had the absolute right to strip citizenship.
Okay.
But he had a problem. The administrative record, so the official facts of the case, it only showed one thing.
That Afroyim had voted.
That was it. That was the only crime. And Gordon must have realized that stripping citizenship just for voting, it sounds pretty harsh to the justices, right?
Yeah, it sounds like an overreach.
Exactly. So in the middle of the oral arguments, Gordon tries to introduce new facts.
Wait, like on the fly?
On the fly. He claims that Afroyim had also naturalized as an Israeli citizen. He's basically trying to say, look, he didn't just vote, he became Israeli too.
But that's a huge procedural foul, isn't it? You can't just invent new evidence at the Supreme Court.
It's a massive foul, and it really annoyed the justices, specifically Justice Fortas. They saw it as the government trying to have it both ways.
Trying to win on the voting issue, but keeping a backup argument in their pocket just in case.
Right. And the experts in our transcript, they suggest this irritation might have just backfired on the government, like spectacularly.
So instead of a narrow ruling, the court decided to drop the hammer.
They did. They could have just said, voting isn't a good enough reason to take away citizenship. Simple.
But they went much further.
So much further. They ruled that the government has no power to strip citizenship from a U.S. citizen unless the government can prove the citizen intended to give it up.
That word intent, that's the pivot point there.
It changed everything. Before Afroyim, the burden was on you to prove you followed all the rules. After Afroyim, the burden shifted to the government to prove you wanted to stop being American.
It transformed citizenship from a revocable license
Into a constitutional right protected by the 14th Amendment.
Okay, so on the surface, this looks like a slam dunk for civil liberties. Bayes Afroyim wins, strict liability is dead, my citizenship is safe unless I explicitly say, I'm out.
That's the takeaway, yeah.
But the discussion between Malakouti and Richardson, it takes a really sharp turn here. They start arguing that this robustness isn't actually universal.
And this is where we have to get into the technical weeds a little, because the devil is really in the details of the 14th Amendment itself.
Okay.
The text says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens.
In the United States, meaning like physically on U.S. soil.
Correct. So what about people born abroad to American parents? I mean, millions of people are in this category. They're citizens, right?
Of course. If my parents are American and I'm born in London, I'm an American.
You are. But you're a citizen by statute, by a law passed by Congress, not by the Constitution itself. And in a later case, Rogers v. Belay in 1971, the Supreme Court clarified this exact distinction.
Yeah, what did they say?
They effectively said that because Congress created your citizenship with a law, a statute, Congress can also attach conditions to it.
Wait, hold on. So we have a two-tier system?
Theoretically, yes. You've got the gold standard, which is 14th Amendment citizenship born on the soil. That's the one Afroyim protects. It's incredibly hard to lose.
Okay. And the other one?
Then you have the silver standard statutory citizenship. And that one is, in theory, revocable if Congress decides to change the retention requirements.
That sounds alarming. If I'm a statutory citizen, could Congress pass a law tomorrow saying if you don't live in the U.S. for 5 years, you lose your passport?
Legally, yes. Rogers v. Belay says they can. Now, currently, they don't really do that, but the legal architecture is there. It's just less robust.
Okay, so if I'm a strategic thinker and I want to give my child the absolute best, most bulletproof status, the logic seems obvious, have the baby in the United States, get that gold standard, 14th Amendment protection.
That is the intuitive answer. But here is where this whole deep dive gets really interesting. John Richardson, the citizenship expert in the source, he argues the exact opposite.
The opposite.
He says having the baby in the U.S. might actually be a trap.
How can the gold standard be a trap? That doesn't make sense.
It's because of the unique way the United States handles taxes. As we all know, the U.S. tax is based on citizenship, not residency.
Right. If you're an American, the IRS owns a piece of your income no matter where on earth you live.
Precisely. Richardson calls the U.S. a fiscal prison for this very reason. You can't just move to escape the taxes.
You've had to formally renounce your citizenship.
Exactly. Now imagine you're that child born in the U.S. You have that robust 14th Amendment citizenship. The government can't take it away, but you have no other citizenship. You are, as he puts it, monoculture. So if you ever decide that the tax burden is too high and you want to leave the U.S. system, you can't.
Because if you renounce, you become stateless.
Yeah.
And being stateless is a complete nightmare.
Exactly. You are locked in. You are what Richardson calls an untouchable in the U.S. tax caste system. You're basically property of the system because you have no exit option.
Wow. Okay, so walk me through the alternative then. Why is the weaker statutory citizenship better in this scenario?
So let's say you have that same baby abroad, maybe in a country that grants citizenship at birth or where the other parent is a local citizen. That child is born with 2 passports.
So they get the local one and they get the U.S. statutory citizenship, the silver standard.
Right. Now remember, the weakness of that statutory citizenship is that the U.S. could take it away. But in this scenario, if the U.S. takes it away, well, so what?
The child has another nationality to fall back on.
They do. But the real power comes from the choice. If that child grows up and decides the U.S. tax web is just too suffocating, they can voluntarily renounce the U.S. citizenship and fall back on their second passport.
I see. So the robustness comes from the redundancy, not from the U.S. Constitution itself.
That's it, exactly. Richardson argues that dual citizenship from birth is the single most valuable gift a parent can give a child. It creates what he calls a Brahmin class of citizens.
People who have the privileges of being American, but also hold the key to the exit door if things go south.
Right. It really flips the script. We usually think of the anchor baby concept people coming to the U.S. to secure citizenship, but this suggests the truly elite move is actually to secure a foreign citizenship to balance out the American one.
It's all about leverage. If you only have one option, you have zero leverage against the state. If you have two, you have bargaining power. You have the ability to just say no.
Which leads perfectly into this concept they discussed called the flywheel of nations.
Right, because if you're going to get a second citizenship, does it matter which one? Does it have to be, a powerhouse like Germany or Japan?
Parviz Malakouti, the attorney, says absolutely not. And this is a really crucial point for anyone listening who might be kind of dismissing their heritage from quote-unquote lesser countries.
Okay.
The value of a citizenship isn't just its GDP or its visa-free travel right now. It's about the future option value.
Like buying a stock when it's low.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Malakouti suggests you should collect every citizenship you're eligible for. Maybe you have an Irish grandmother or a Mexican parent, or you can get Italian citizenship by descent.
Even if that country seems unstable or poor today.
Yeah, because geopolitical winds shift. Countries rise and fall.
In 1940, a British passport was the golden ticket. By 1950, Europe was in ruins. And an Argentine passport looked pretty good.
Exactly. You just don't know what the world will look like in 20 or 30 years.
Mhm.
Having that other passport in your back pocket is an insurance policy against your primary country failing.
But there's a practical barrier here that we have to talk about. We've been talking high-level law constitutional amendments, Supreme Court rulings. But in the real world, you don't interact with the Supreme Court.
No, you interact with the clerk at a window.
The first instance problem.
Yes, this was a major theme in the discussion. You can have all the rights in the world on paper, but if the bureaucrat at the passport agency decides to deny your application, you are, for all intents and purposes, grounded.
Because the burden of fighting that denial is just massive.
It costs thousands of dollars, years of litigation. Most people just give up. So, practically speaking, the law is whatever that clerk says it is in that moment.
And a transcript mentions this in the context of, 2025 politics. There's a fear that this bureaucracy could be weaponized.
Right. The discussion touched on the idea that a hostile administration, and they referenced the political climate around Trump and the GOP in 2025, they wouldn't need to amend the Constitution to restrict citizenship.
They could just jam the gears of the bureaucracy.
Death by 1,000 paper cuts. They could start demanding impossible proof of your parents' residence from 40 years ago. They could delay processing indefinitely. They could scrutinize statutory citizens much more aggressively.
And if you can't get that passport book in your hand, the robustness of your citizenship is just theoretical. It's not actual.
Not at all.
So what's the countermove? If the system tries to jam you up, how do you keep your options open?
The experts had a very clear directive on this. Stock up on proof. Do not assume the government has your records or that they will interpret them favorably.
What does that mean, practically speaking?
It means if you have a child abroad, get the consular report of birth abroad immediately. Don't wait. Get the passport card and the passport book. Renew them 6 months early. Keep a physical archive of every single document that proves your chain of citizenship.
So treat your citizenship paperwork like the deed to your house.
It's more important than the deed to your house. You can buy another house. You can't easily buy another nationality. And this connects right back to that deep exit concept they talked about.
Differentiate that for me. Deep exit versus a shallow exit.
A shallow exit is what most expats do. You move to Costa Rica, you sit on a beach, drink margaritas, you're physically gone.
But legally and financially, you are still fully tethered to the U.S.
Completely. You're still filing taxes, you're still subject to all the FTC banking regulations. You've left the room, but you're still listening to the conversation, so to speak.
Okay.
A deep exit is a complete severance. It involves renouncing your U.S. citizenship to fully detach from the regulatory and tax obligations.
The ultimate break glass in case of emergency move.
It is. But, and this brings us full circle, you can only execute a deep exit if you have that second passport ready to go.
If you're the untouchable born in Kansas with no other ties, a deep exit is impossible. You're stuck with the shallow exit.
Exactly. And that is why the definition of robustness has totally shifted. In 1967, robustness meant the Supreme Court protecting you from the government. In 2026, robustness means having enough options that you don't need the Supreme Court to protect you.
You protect yourself through diversification.
It's the belt and suspenders approach to liberty.
But I have to ask, isn't there a risk that by talking about all this, we can ruin it?
That was the final and, somewhat ominous note from the discussion. One of the commentators, a guy named Brent, brought up unintended consequences. We are, right now, in a kind of golden age of dual citizenship.
It's never been easier to hold multiple passports, work remotely, and arbitrage these different systems.
The governments aren't stupid.
No, they're not. And they're greedy.
Mhm.
If they see a mass exodus of wealth, or they see too many people using birth tourism or strategic family planning to opt out of the tax base.
They will close the loopholes. They could make it harder to renounce. They could impose harsher exit taxes. They could pressure other countries to stop offering citizenship by descent.
All of it.
Exactly. We might look back at the mid-2020s as the absolute peak of mobility freedom. The window might already be closing.
Which puts a bit of a clock on this, doesn't it? If you've been thinking about claiming that Italian citizenship, or you're debating where to have your next child,
The advice from this deep dive is crystal clear. Do it now. Secure the option while the option still exists. An option you have but don't use is free.
an option you need but don't have is priceless.
Precisely.
That is a really powerful way to frame it. It changes citizenship from a static identity, I am an American, into a dynamic asset.
An asset that requires active management. It's an asset class, really. Just like you diversify your financial portfolio, you should diversify your political risk.
Well, I certainly won't look at my passport the same way again. It's not just a travel document, it's a leash.
Yeah.
But if you have two of them, it's a set of wings.
Beautifully put.
A huge thank you to the insights from Parviz Malakouti, John Richardson, and all the voices from that mobility space discussion. This was a heavy topic, but man, is it important.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to you for listening. Go call your grandma and ask where she was born. We'll see you on the next deep dive.